everyone. We'll make a start. Delighted today to be joined by Kirsty and John, who'll be joining us after Kirsty's slot. This is March 2021, I think. We continue to do our Bulletproof webinar series, which has been it's gone down really well with you all, and delighted to see many of you continue to come back for more, which is great. I just wanted to do a quick update on a few things that I think might be useful for you. Most of it we've shared anyway with our PDFs in the community group and on social media and some of the videos that we've done, but just to reinforce that CBILS does come to an end tomorrow. So if you've not already put your application in, then you really do need to get in touch today, because we need to get that off. You don't need to have the deal approved before 31st of March, but we do have to have the application in place. So I've never, and I'm sure Kirsty, who's been doing this for a long time, has never seen any deals anywhere near as favourable as what CBILS is offering. Just incredible terms, and we'll probably never, or I'm pretty sure we'll never ever see it again. So, you know, most of our clients now have their CBILS secured, and they'll have 12 months of free capital in which time they can decide whether they want to keep hold of that debt or they want to repay it. But if they keep hold of it, still very preferential terms. So please speak to MAP today if you've not got your CBILS monies secured. Comes to an end tomorrow. There's then the recovery loan scheme, which is not as favourable. But if you decide at any point in the future that you need to get more capital into your business, then let us know. Secondly, changes to furlough.
Can I just jump in and just say quickly that we've heard today that all the lenders have got to go through accreditation with the British Business Bank again for the recovery loan. So there is going to be a delay. So we don't know when the recovery loans are going to be live, but it's not going to be on the 5th or 6th of April.
Yeah, so, and there's no repayment holidays on those ones.
No repayment holidays, no 12 months paid by the government or anything like that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Secondly, furlough, which will be relevant to a lot of you, has been extended to September. Changes there are that there's going to be a reducing of the government's contribution. So from July, you will need to start contributing 10% of the 80% of your employees' wages. And then thereafter, it will be 20% of the 80%, which will need to be contributed by the employer. Just check I've got those dates right. So yeah, so up to June, no change. From July, you'll have to contribute 10% of the 80 as the employer, and then August and September, 20% of the 80% as the employer. Previously, it applied to employees that were on the October 2020 or earlier payroll, and now that has been extended to anyone on the payroll as of February. So between now and September this year, you're going to be able to claim furlough for anyone who needs to be furloughed that was on the payroll from February or earlier. So appreciate that might sound confusing. Just get in touch with us if you'd like any more detail on that. The Help to Grow scheme, so Help to Grow for your leadership and management development, and Help to Grow Digital. You are now able to register your interest for those schemes. So I'll share the URL in the chat in a second when Kirsty starts. And you can register interest now so that you don't get missed. So when it does go live, they'll be in touch with you to let you know how those schemes work. But they're effectively grant monies, not loan, to help with leadership and management development and use of technology, software subscriptions as well. There's been some changes to R&D. So again, complex area, but essentially there used to be a cap on R&D, which was related to how much PAYE you paid. That got removed and now it's been put back in, but much more favourable than it used to be. So essentially, you can't claim R&D credits more than 3 times your PAYE bills in that year, plus £20,000 randomly. So not as bad as it used to be before the cap was removed, but there is a cap on that again now. And then the other thing is the super deduction, which is the government's way of incentivising businesses to start investing again in what they call plant and machinery. But for agencies, typically means office equipment, computer equipment, that kind of thing. You're going to get favourable tax treatment on purchasing equipment. So again, speak to us if you want to know what qualifies and what doesn't. That's all for me. I look forward to not only talking about coronavirus related stuff very soon, but now we're still in the thick of it. Steve, I think you wanted to just do a quick slot about some of the things that you've been seeing from the legal sector.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I mean, it's one for all of us, really. But I think anybody who visits Prolific North for more than 10 seconds or any of the other sites that everybody reads, there's a lot of M&A activity going on. It's a really encouraging sign. And it appears to be more often than not a merger of equals rather than distressed, although distressed M&A is going on. We're obviously dealing with a fair few of these. What I would say is, whether or not now is the right time to sort of finalise the dance and head up to the hotel room is very much going to depend on where you're at and what you want for yourselves over the course of the next few years. And I think there's more useful discussions being had around a sensible approach to due diligence as well. So it might be a good time, given that the market's rising, just to push back a little bit on some of the more outlandish requests you might be getting and maybe challenge the scope of what needs to be done a little bit more. But for that, obviously, you need a good accountant. That way, you need a good broker, you need a good IFA, and it's a good time to get advice really from all of us when you're thinking about that. And apart from that, I mentioned it before, the ICO investigation into direct marketing is now picking up again. And we're probably going to see the final form of the amended direct marketing code of practice sometime soon as well. So I know it's data protection, but something to keep your eye on for the next 6 months.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Steve. If you want to just switch off your camera, that's great. Kirsty, if you want to start up your camera, and whilst Kirsty's doing that, just to let everybody know that the whole series of the Bulletproof webinars are now available on our YouTube channel. So it's actually the MAP YouTube channel that they're on. So feel free to go and access those if you want to go back through the library. But the reason we brought Kirsty on today, and John as well, is to echo what Steve's just said, really, is that we've seen a heightened level of M&A activity. Many of our clients have had sort of interest out of the blue, if you like, coming from big agency networks that are looking to acquire or invest in our clients and private equity firms as well. This is an area that MAP and Kirsty are very passionate about, because we believe that not enough business owners, it's not just about agencies, not enough business owners properly plan for their exit. And the reality is that we all have to do it one day, regardless. So this isn't something that's only relevant to those that, are looking at building an empire. This is just thinking about how do you one day exit this business. So Kirsty's come to bring some structure and some focus on that today. If you have any other suggestions, we build these webinars around what's useful to you. So if there's anything else that's on your mind, anything that you think will be useful for us to cover, then let us know. We're trying to do one in a month's time all around operations and scope creep and pricing. So we've got that signposted for next month. But if there's anything else that you'd like us to cover, then please just get in touch and let us know. Okay, without further ado, over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm honoured to be on this. I'm just going to start sharing the slides, if that's all right. Honoured to be on this webinar today with you guys. It's been great working with MAP over the last year or so. The Corporate Finance Network is a group of accountancy firms across the UK, and I brought them together probably 15 years ago. I started to build this because I could see that whilst the largest firms had all the tools and resources and databases and these quite expensive things that they needed to advise their clients on corporate finance, the smaller firms didn't. And the smaller firms were acting for the vast proportion of all the owner-managed businesses in our country. So I knew that if we were going to advise business owners better to the highest level possible about growth and buying businesses and selling businesses and being properly capitalized and so on, then the accountancy firms that were advising them needed those resources. So that's what the Corporate Finance Network is. It's a little bit like a franchise operation in that we have some centralized systems, databases, access to skills and very specialist skills, and all the firms that are members can use that without actually having to have full-time staff on their books, if you like. And certainly when it comes to research and market intelligence and databases, then that's really crucial and makes a massive difference. So MAP joined us last year, and having been a fan of MAP as a firm anyway, I was delighted that they joined us and have really fit in well with the rest of the network. and are doing some brilliant things already now with their firms. Now they have access to all these extra systems and databases, which just means it's much more efficient for them to offer this work. And, you know, that means that you don't have to go to a specialist corporate finance boutiques. You don't have to go to the biggest firms of accountants. You can work with your existing accountant, whether that's MAP in most of your cases on here, because they know you best. They already know that your plans, they understand your personal goals and your business goals. And that means that the advice they're going to be able to give you is going to be far more tailored to your needs. So delighted that Paul's asked me to come on and talk about value building today. But I thought I'd start off with just setting the scene a little bit. So who says what your value is and what is your value? And that all depends really on the position that you're in at the time. So at the moment, you may just be what we might describe as a lifestyle business. You know, you're running a business for your own purposes, you're earning a crust out of it, you're employing some staff, and you're running the way that you want to run it. And therefore, the value of a business to you may not be what a purchaser thinks the value is. But as Paul's quite rightly said, everybody at some point needs to exit their business. And as you'll see, I'll come to right at the very end, you really should be thinking about building valuation for a purchaser as soon as you start your business. So one of the best things my mum ever taught me, and there weren't much, I don't think, but one of the best, she certainly didn't teach me to cook, but one of the best things she did teach me was when you buy a house, make sure you can sell it. You know, you buy it and you invest in it with the view to ultimately selling it. Now, if you think about your business, potentially that could be your largest personal asset. So you really need to think about making sure that that's the best value it can be and that it is sellable. But we're going to come on to how you value and the different values shortly. And then I'm going to, you know, talking about why would you want to sell your business? Well, at some point, you know, I have a pretty horrendous saying that everybody exits their business at some point. It's either in an organized way or it's in a box. You know, it's a fact of life. We all have to exit our businesses. So why would you exit plan? Because it makes it so much simpler when you are ready to exit. You know, it makes it so much more attractive to the purchasers and the process much calmer, because it is incredibly stressful if you start on the journey of actually going through a transaction, whether you're buying or selling. So the calmer you can make that, the better for you, really. And you want to make sure that you're going to crystallize your value. So what is it that you do? Well, I'm going to give you 5 key ways that you can build business value for every single type of business out there. But bearing in mind that you guys mostly are digital agencies, what you have got access to through a MAP is a real amazing process. I say amazing, I built most of it myself, so I'm being a bit bragging a bit, but we have got the best exit planning processes that are available probably in the world, but definitely in the UK. We have refined the process for how to build value and how to make a business actually sellable. And MAP have got access to that, but what MAP have also done is they've refined it and curated it a bit so it's more specific just to the digital sector, digital agency sector. Therefore, you have got access to some brilliant tools, which mean that you can personalize your own action plan for your own situation, personal situation, your own business situation. So I would really recommend after this call that that's what you do next. You go to MAP and you speak to them about a personalized one-to-one exit planning program that they can work through with you. But as I said, today I'm just going to give you 5 things that every business can do anyway. When do you then start to build your business value, and when do you actually exit? So that's something I'm just going to come to first before we talk about the 5 different things that I suggest that you do. Now, if you were to look at this graph here, now this is supposedly a typical life cycle curve of a business. Now it might be, you know, up to 15 years, you might manage to get through that curve in 5 years. Every business is different, but just for an example here, maybe that's, you know, 2.5 million, 3 million, 3.5 million turnover up the right hand side, could be profits, could be anything. But just to demonstrate, Perhaps in the chat, you might want to put your answers. If you can change your answers to everyone, not just panelists. Paul, you'll have to shout the answers to these because I'm not going to be able to see them because I'm sharing my screen. When do you think a business owner should sell their business if this was their curve to maximize their return? So when do you think is the best time to sell a business?
So A, B, C, or D is what
A, B, C, or D, yeah.
Yeah.
Which in this particular example is year 6, year 9, year 12, year 14. So what types of answers are we getting?
Yeah, so it's basically rapid growth, isn't it? Starting to mature, starting to decline, and then rapid decline effectively. So we've got ABB, AB, A.
Okay, so interesting. Now, I think A is a little bit early stage to sell because you haven't really proven all of that growth. You're starting to grow and you're going to be trying to convince purchasers that you're still growing. But if you sell at A, then you're losing the potential of that extra growth yourself and keeping it. At B, you've convinced everybody that that growth has happened because that's historical. And you've still got a little bit more growth to go. Now, you can still say that that's going to carry on that curve, that straight curve going upward like that, even though you might know that it might be leveling off a bit. So B will be the perfect time to sell. C is too late, and D is often when question number 2, when do they usually choose to sell? It's usually at D. So when things start to dip and the business owner's getting tired and they're losing energy and momentum, then they decide they want to sell. And that's probably the worst time to sell. So now for you, what is your graph? What does your curve look like in your business? It might look nothing like this, but you need to understand where you are on that curve, on your life cycle curve. And therefore, when are you going to reach point B? Now, that's something that you can do with MAP, and you'll do that with projections. You'll do obviously historical accounts, your business strategy, your growth plans, and you want to try and plot what you think your graph's going to look like, because you need to know that by the time you get to B, you need to be ready to sell. Now, if you're anywhere before B at the moment, you should still be exit planning so that you're building value and you're making your business attractive. Now, how do we build value in a business? So it's obviously about profits and it's about size and it's about turnover. But look at these two businesses. These two businesses have the same turnover and the same profits. Business A, the owner dominates the sales. They're quite autocratic and the operations and the way the business is run, they completely run the whole show. The working practices are not great. They're not very systemized. They're quite ad hoc. The equipment, the tech is quite old school. They haven't got a great profile on social media, and they've got few recurring customers, and the staff's quite quick turnover. So even though they're turning over a decent amount and making good profits, that's business A. Same business, but same size business, but business B has got a much better functioning management team. It's got a strategic approach to where they're going. They're always thinking about efficiencies and systems. They're investing in new tech and equipment. They're regularly in the trade press. They're award winners. They've got recurring customers and they've got a loyal team. B is on the up, A is on the down. Yep. So even though their current profitability is the same, on paper, they may look like they have the same valuation, because if you take, a theoretical valuation is often based on the sector and the profitability. So if these are in the same sector, then you would say, well, they've got the same valuation. But of course, business B is going to have far more interest, far more purchasers interested in buying them than business A is. And what happens when you have more interest? You get competitive bidding and the value of the business goes up. So a paper valuation is worthless, really. Forget what the theoretical valuations are. That's a very, very rough guide. Really, in practice, the most attractive businesses get the most value, and business B in this case would be the most attractive, irrespective of the fact that both of them have got the same profitability. Because even on the first approach, if you like, the first interest, businesses might look similar because of the size of them. Once the purchasers start going under the bonnet and doing due diligence and digging around and understanding how that business operates and how that business is running, then business B is going to be far more attractive to them ultimately. So the final deal, when it's signed off, B would get far more than A if A was sellable at all, even though it's making good profits. We are not an acquisitive nation. There are not that many acquirers, business owners. Perhaps, you guys on the call here, I don't know how many of you have ever bought a business. We are getting better, and certainly the digital sector is more acquisitive than most. But you won't find 10 purchasers lined up for every business. So you've got to be able to stand out and make sure that your business is really attractive. Okay, so let's go into the 5 different steps that every business can do. The first one, refocus. Refocus what you're doing and why you're doing it. So at the moment, you'll be running a business and you may not have thought about your exit particularly. You maybe think that's for older people. It might be, when you get to a certain age, and then you might think about it. But as I've said, you need to start thinking about this from the beginning. So no matter where you are in your business journey, you need to be thinking about exiting already, just so that you build that value and you become attractive. Now, that means that the way you run your business from your point of view, your lifestyle point of view, may be different to how a purchaser is going to see your business. And therefore, you're going to have to change some things if you really want to build value. Now, that isn't going to be comfortable for some of you in some areas. If you are quite an autocratic business owner, if you want to do everything yourself, then you are going to find it difficult and a little bit out your comfort zone if you are going to be building teams and putting systems in place, and not something that you're 100% comfortable with. But what you have to focus on instead is, why are you building this business? Why are you not an employee? Why are you not a subcontractor? Why are you having sleepless nights and taking risks and taking on staff and being responsible for their salaries and growing a business that way? Why are you doing all this if it is not to crystallize that at the end of it and walk away with a lump sum to repay you for all of those risks that you've taken? So you have to make a decision. Am I going to build this business just for now and then walk away and never be able to sell it? Or am I going to build this business because I want to walk away with a lump sum? And if it's the latter, you need to start that now, really. So things like, not wanting to pay tax, doing everything you can to put everything through the P&L so that you don't have a big tax bill. That's fine for now, but that's not great if you're a purchaser looking at a set of accounts. So you have to realize that when you're about 3 to 4 years away from actually selling, the purchaser will be looking back at those accounts that you're filing, and they'll want to see gradual growth in turnover, in profitability and in cash flow. So bear that in mind, that the accounts that you file, even if you only file abridged or small accounts, the purchaser is going to see your full accounts, and you don't want them to be questioning why the profit's low in that year or that year, and you're trying to give them reasons of, oh, it's because we put extra costs through for this, or we put extra costs through for that. It's much easier if you can just show them it as it is, with a nice growing profitability, nice growing turnover. So be careful what you're focusing on, and what you're trying to achieve in the long run. But I would absolutely say keep it really focused on the valuation and the purchaser's view of your business in 3 or 4 years' time.
Raised a really good point there, Kirsty, because it's about that thing of what's right for you now is not necessarily what's right for you then. So there's a big difference about the decisions that you should be making as a business if you're selling in 3 years versus if you're selling in 10 years. And of course, we don't all have a crystal ball and things don't work out exactly as you want. But if you've not even got a plan in the first place, you've got nothing to be agile with. So having a plan is to say, we're going to make decisions that are fitting towards building and growing a business at this point. And then at this point, we're going to make decisions that are based on maximizing profitability. And as you say, whilst those areas that you've mentioned there, that if they were going through the business, during due diligence, you could explain them and extrapolate them from the P&L, you kind of don't get that chance if you've not made yourself attractive enough in the first place. And I can't emphasize that enough. I think often business owners talk about, how do I maximize the value and what's my business worth? Well, actually, nothing if nobody will buy it. It's only worth what someone's going to buy. And I think it's like, the guys from Cactus are on today, they've done their research, but it's like a fraction of 1% of businesses that ever actually sell. So the big goal is to be attractive, first and foremost, I think. And as you say, when you're filing accounts on Companies House, they don't see the fact that, oh yeah, but they were just to save tax. They just see that you've not made enough money for them to be interested enough in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. And especially if they're larger businesses, larger purchasers, they don't do this thing that owner managed businesses do of trying to cut the tax bill. You know, they just report the figures and they want to report them really positively. So yeah, it's a completely different mindset. Talking of mindset, this is the next one. So when I talked about autocratic owners before, maybe you are, maybe you're partly like that. But what you really need to do now is to make yourself redundant. In other words, work yourself out of the business day-to-day role, because no purchaser wants to take on a load of hassle when they buy a business. They need to be able to see that if you leave the business, now you might have plans to stay with that business for 6 months, 12 months, even have a paid role in that merged company, but they might not have that view. They might want you out. So you don't want to be restricting the types of purchases you can have. You need to be making it as easy as possible for a purchaser to buy your business. And if you were to leave the business today, if you went on a 3-month holiday now and didn't check in with the company, how would it fare over that 3 months? Now, some of you might say better, actually, if you're not sticking your nose in as much. But, you know, can it stand on its own 2 feet? And that's the thing that we're trying to show, that this is a business in its own right. It isn't just an owner with some staff and some clients. This is a business. So that's what you've got to do. Now, on the full exit planning workshop that MAP can do with you, there are 10 areas that a business owner typically can get involved in. And we only want you to be involved in 2 of them. So, you know, the 80-20 rule, you're only involved in 2 of them. And that's very much the strategic areas of the business, working on the business, not in the business. You've probably heard that expression before. Working out where your strategy is going to be, where your growth is going to be, how to make the business more efficient. That's what you need to be doing. What you don't want to be doing is even selling, right? So if you can get somebody else running the sales process, the marketing, the pricing, then that's ideal, because that business will still be able to sell then once you've left. Now, the selling process is probably one of the easier ones to replace, because some of you might be quite small businesses and thinking, I haven't got the cash to recruit all these extra members of staff to do everything that I do. But what you've got to think about is how can we facilitate this at a lowest cost possible, or the lowest risk possible? That's what you need to be thinking about, risk. Because if you can bring in a member of the sales team who are mostly commission based, then your risk is a lot less, because if they don't perform, then you're not paying for them. But if you can think about any other ways that you can use your team to do the day-to-day operations of the business, then that's really what you're aiming for. So sales and the operations are the things that you really need to walk away from, and you need to somehow facilitate that business to be able to deliver those itself without you being involved. Okay. Why is that the case? Because then when everything's really systemized, the purchaser is able to come in, throw a load of money at the business, and it can scale. And that's what they want to see. They want to see this business being able to scale. Now, if you offer a really personalized service to every single client, then you're actually not helping yourself. It might sound great from a customer service perspective, but that's going to be really difficult to scale. So ideally, you want your service to look as if it's bespoke, to look as if it's personalized, but actually to have systems behind it that means that it's not, that it just rolls out. So that if you were to get £1 million injected into that business, it could absolutely fly. And just with the extra marketing and the extra sales, it would absolutely fly. So that's what we need to be thinking about: making yourself redundant, working yourself out of the business, and doing as little as possible from the sales and the operations point of view, concentrating on the strategic areas. And MAP can certainly help you with that, and think about management information systems, KPIs, and all of those things as well.
This is the thing about, it depends where you are on the journey as well, doesn't it? Like, whether you are looking to maximize profit or you're looking to grow, it's, people often say, how do I compare to other agencies? Well, it depends what type of agency you're trying to build and where you are on that journey of building that agency, because what your revenue per head should be at one stage in the journey is very different from what it should be at another stage of the journey, depending on whether you're trying to grow fast, whether you're trying to sell the business, whether you're trying to maximize profitability. So the point of setting KPIs, that has to come out of setting a business plan and, working on a thorough business plan that is really clear that this is where we're aiming for and this is what we're doing. And then the KPIs that are relevant to you and what results you should get from tracking those KPIs, will be dependent on what you're trying to achieve as a business and where you are now.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that then leads on nicely. It's almost like we planned this, Paul. It leads on nicely to this one, because this is all about predicting the future and projections in particular. So a purchaser will want to buy something that's as low a risk as possible. And if they can almost predict what your sales are going to be, your costs are going to be, your margins are going to be, where the market's going, then that means their risk is lower, and that means they're prepared to pay more for the business. So if you can have sets of projections which are proven because you've been running them for years, you've had budgets, you've had business plans, you've had forecasts, and you look at where they're slightly out, you look at the variances and you adapt them, and you end up refining them over a period of years so that you're absolutely spot on with your business plans, and you can see where your growth is, you can see where that curve's going to be. Then you absolutely will impress a purchaser, especially if they're buying at the smaller end of the market, because they don't expect to get that. So if you can do that, you're going to be one step ahead of the competition if they're looking at different acquisition targets. So projections are so important, and wherever possible, try and refine your operations so that you have recurring customers, so we can see where the sales are going to be coming from. You have set pricing fees, you know what your costs are going to be to deliver a project, you've got a very good handle on the system of operations so that projects don't overrun. You're talking about next time doing scope creep, so it's not the business you win a really good piece of work and then it ends up being loss making. That's just not going to be a steady, resilient business for a purchaser to be interested in. So systems all the way through, measure everything and show that as much as possible about the future is known as can be. I know, no one probably did predict COVID very well, but, things will come out of left field. But on the whole, in terms of your regular business, your day-to-day business, then you should be able to show a purchaser, a potential purchaser, where your growth plan is going to be, and for it to be credible, because you've done it before. It's not just the first time you've thrown a set of projections together, because they won't believe those at all, and they'll end up spending loads of time on due diligence to try and get a handle on that themselves, and that just drags the deal out, costs everyone more money. So if you can get that manager information really strong, you can show that you've got your KPIs, you've got your business plan, you've got your projections, and it's used all the time to direct the business, and that's the role that you as a business owner play in running that company. Then you're going to be really showing some good value growth there.
I think some of our clients as well, Kirsty, in the creative sector, are naturally good at this, that it's effectively about storytelling, isn't it? Like, it's the ability to join the dots and say, when we achieved this in that year, it was as a direct result of doing this, and therefore when we do this next year and the year after, it's going to achieve this. So if you can use the past, like any acquirer of your business doing due diligence doesn't want to just rely on your say-so that the business is going to scale. They want to look back in detail at historical data, and for it to be able to tell a story. And that's also part of the importance of having a proper robust MI pack, management information pack. Things like board minutes, do you keep board minutes that show that you made a decision and it led to a result? All of that really good governance that we talked about a month ago with Cactus, all comes back to support you when you're looking at exiting your business, because that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to values in the eye of the beholder and all of that. We're looking to create a story that's compelling to the purchaser that we're talking about now, and ideally your message will be bespoke to the purchaser that you're speaking to.
Yeah, and that's really part of the exit planning process as well, is to think about who your purchasers could be, and who they are in detail, that company or that company or that company, and then you've got an idea then of what they're going to be looking for, and you can keep a track on what they're already buying and what they're paying for things, and understand really where their criteria is and their parameters are. So increasing your profile, again, is something I fully expect this sector to be really good at. So if you, because you do it for clients, this is probably what some of you really work on, but if you have, say, a potential purchaser in the States or in the Far East, and they were to try and find a UK business in your sector that's about your size, would they find you? If they put into Google digital sector UK, where would you be? Would they come across you? Or are you only really known in the local area where you work? So having a good profile is really important on social media in the trade industry bodies, with the the awards, in the press, all the usual stuff that you'll be doing for customers. Then this is something that you'll be definitely having to do for yourself. And it's not just about you picking up sales now, it's about you having that profile globally, that you will be found. And if they were to put your company name into Google, having found you, what will come up on that first page? Hopefully it's all really good positive testimonials, it's good positive press articles. Heaven forbid it's something like a tribunal case that was in the local press. We don't want any of that. We want all positive, good profile raising things. So definitely work on that. And then lastly, out of these 5 anyway, before I just give you a final thought, create some IP if at all possible. The thing about your business, it's a lot like professional services businesses, is that you're people business, very much a people business. And therefore what you're doing is you're selling your people, your staff, and you're selling your client list. Now, if that's all you're selling, then that's quite difficult to value. But if you, on top of that, are able to create some sort of IP, whether it's a product, whether it's a process, something that you can hang some figures on to say, because of that process, because of that product, we have earned this amount of money. So you need to be able to split it off in your P&L account as well, in your chart of accounts. You need to be able to measure it so that you can say, we've got this is our whole business, but part of that business is because of this IP. And that, if you can demonstrate the numbers behind that, that will just make you far more valuable than another business that's just got people and a client list. So somehow thinking all the time about how can we turn this into IP, and how can we measure it so that we're able to profile it, and it stands on its own as well. So, and if you think about, can you license it? Could you get some royalties for it? Then that's how you think about, oh yeah, that's IP, that's worth something. So that's really worth thinking about if that's possible, and with what you do. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about is, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've recently just done some research on the businesses that we've sold on behalf of the member firms of the Corporate Finance Network. So we do the early stage research work for a lot of our firms. And of the businesses that we've sold, we found buyers for 81% of those businesses, but 19% of those businesses were sold to somebody that approached them directly. And some of you will have had this already, and I know some of you have had direct approaches in the past from potential acquirers of your business. And that might sound like an absolute fantastic red letter day, this news out the blue, how amazing. However, I have known over the years countless businesses that have had an approach from a potential purchaser, and it has really damaged their business. Because what happens is, if they are not ready to sell, if they are not in a good position, then the due diligence and the deal negotiations will just fall apart. And therefore, we may be going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line discussing with a potential purchaser for it never to happen. So number one, what has then happened is that business has, unfortunately, the business owners had his eye taken off the ball, his or her eye taken off the ball, and they haven't been growing their own business because they're already on a beach in the Caribbean. They already think they've exited their business, and it's human nature that you just somehow start to spend a little less attention on the current business because you're thinking about the exit. So that's dangerous unless it actually happens. So make sure that you are ready at any time for that approach. And the other thing I would just say is, just in case you're not a client of MAP and you don't get this immediate advice, if you do get that approach, what we would always recommend is that you go out to market anyway at that point, and you don't just have that negotiation with that one business, but you open the market up to try and find some competitive bids from other potential purchasers. So again, you've got to be ready to do that, because that, we want to get that going, and we want to get some discussions going with other potential players within a few weeks. So your information's got to be ready, your management information's got to be there, you've got to look good, it's got to be a strong business case. We've got to be able to sell the story. So red letter days are great, fantastic, and some of you will end up selling to those, some of you won't, and we need to make sure that it doesn't damage your business if that does happen. That's it from me.
And thanks, Kirsty. And so feel free to pop questions in, guys. I've got 4 questions that have been sent to me privately for obvious reasons. But the thing about that red letter day as well is you say about taking your mind off the business, and you've already got your sort of mindset on the beach in Barbados, but it's also your time, isn't it? Because the amount of time that goes into that due diligence process, particularly if it was unexpected and you've not got all your ducks in a row, there's an awful lot of demands on your business. Like, you'll start to understand your business during the due diligence process better than you've ever understood it before. True. Because the investor will be asking questions and you think, I wish I'd known this all along, like how these KPIs looked in my business, etc. And they're obviously looking at it through a very grown-up lens at that stage.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why you need to be ready for those questions. Your purchasers will be asking them.
Yeah. So I've had some really good questions here. The first one is your point about IP. So someone's asked, how do you value intangible assets like software you've created for the industry? So they've created something that helps the industry to create websites more easily. Now, without wanting to sound like a cop-out, this genuinely is a really specialist area, value in IP. And the reason it's specialist is because one of the things that will go into that valuation discussion, if you like, that valuation report, is other similar products or systems that have sold to that. So any researcher would look to see if they could see any deals in the past, wouldn't they, Kirsty, of similar products or software that have sold and what they sold for. And I think that concept alone is like a real surprise to a lot of people, because we think that there's like this fixed way of valuing a business or valuing a product software. And as I say, really, it is about working in partnership with someone who can help you on advising on selling your business, because we've got to, between us, ask the right questions of the business and of the product and sell the right story. So yes, you might look at royalties, you might look at revenues, you might look at costs, but we're also going to look at other products that sold on the market. We're going to look at who could be the potential acquirer and what will be the value of this asset in their business. Why would it be a value? How do we prove that it's value? So you've got to do a lot of sort of soft research and do a lot of number crunching and KPI crunching as well, in order to work it out. And if you got 10 corporate finance advisors, all 10 would come up with a different valuation, because they'd all be looking at it differently. But it really is about working in partnership with your advisor to try and tell the best possible story about what you've built and why you believe deep down this will be a value to another business, and then fleshing that out and putting the substance behind it.
Yeah, and how you think it's going to scale and what the market is and all of that needs to be. The more work you can do to convince a purchaser, the better, really. Yeah. So that you're not relying on them to do that investigation, because sometimes, active acquirers may have acquisition teams, but they're also managing their previous acquisitions. They're trying to integrate their previous acquisitions. So they don't have massive capacity to spend on due diligence. They want to know quite quickly if something is a business they want to buy or invest some time in or not. So they could give you quite a short, quick answer, or not reply at all if we reach out to them. And that would be a shame if there was a lot more to say that wasn't completely obvious. So the more you can do yourself up front, the more it appears credible, the better.
Next one is a bit of an easier question. So how do you recommend to value an agency? So agencies are simpler businesses to value. As Kirsty talked about before, very people driven, and they tend to be therefore based on their proven ability to deliver a return and deliver a profit. So many of you have seen this before, but it's effectively a multiple of the EBITDA. So that the two key drivers of the valuation are the EBITDA, so earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So in layman's terms, net profit. So how much net profit is the business making? Often I've seen, like with a lot of the deals that happen in this sector, if you're sub sort of £500,000 EBITDA, there's not a big active market of big players looking to acquire. As Kirsty said, corporate finance fees for big companies are very expensive. So the deal has to be a certain size for it to be worth them going through that due diligence process. So once you get to, it's not to say businesses can't sell below that, of course they do, and they do all the time. But once you get to 500,000, that's opening you up to the vast majority of the buyers that you'll see in the press in this industry. So then the other part of it is the multiple. We've got this sellability checklist, so if anybody wants to see that, let us know, and we can send that over to you. But that helps to understand what are some of the drivers beyond, as is asked in the next question, just retainers and retention, which yes, they would be drivers, but many other drivers that input into it as well. So we talked about reliance on the business owner and how much they're involved in the day-to-day doing and decision making, and how much they are reliant on being part of the brand. Clients, any individual clients taking up more than sort of 10 to 15% of your revenue will be a big alarm bell. Reliance on individual members of staff, whether you've got a unique proposition, what your growth rate is. So there are lots of factors that go into the multiple. But again, if the seller doesn't typically value the business, the buyer values the business. So if we were acting for you as the seller, we'd be helping to paint the best possible story of why we think you tick as many of those boxes as possible, and why the boxes that you do tick, you tick them really well to show the buyer that they should value it higher. But at the end of the day, we're kind of in the hands of the buyer and what they're willing to pay for it. All we can do is paint the best possible story and give the substance behind it. How do you take an agency to market when you have a unique proposition? So that comes down to doing a lot of work to get the message right. You can't rush this process, because if you rush it, you'll end up putting off the buyer straight away because you've not done your homework, or it'll be a long process to try and encourage them to come up with the right fee. So what you want to do is prepare yourself for all the questions that the buyer is going to ask, and build those into what we call an IM, so an information memorandum up front that goes into all the detail as to why this is a fantastic business to buy for the kind of acquirers that we've identified in the research that are going to be most interested in your business. And then we write to those buyers and we make that presentation as bespoke, customized as possible. Initially, we can do that on a no names basis. So it's confidential and they don't know who you are. And then if they show interest, we get them to sign an NDA, we say who you are, and then we start negotiations and discussions at that point. So that's how we take it to market. I hope that helps. What's the typical multiple for agencies in current climate? From Steve. It can be anywhere from about 4 to about 10 times in reality, Steve, which is obviously a massive range, but not all agencies are obviously equal. It's quite a generic term. A software development agency is very different to a digital marketing agency. Typically, a software development agency will be largely project-based and people-based. A digital marketing agency might have more retainers, less reliance on big clients, more technology, and therefore more efficient, more profitable. So all those things would drive the value up. So somewhere in that range, but perhaps we could do some research at some point, Kirsty, to present this back to our
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that every business is different, and that's the point of this presentation, to show that those two businesses at the beginning that had the same profitability would not get the same value. Business B would definitely get a higher value. So because you enter into a negotiation process, so you start off at the beginning with just purchaser might say, okay, based on this one-page flyer that we send them under this no names basis, first of all, or they'll be thinking, oh, it might be worth whatever, $1 million or something. But then they'll dig under the bonnet, as I said, they'll start the due diligence, they'll meet you, they'll understand more about the potential. The more then credible you can make that information for them, the more believable, the less risk that they have, perceived risk that they have in that acquisition, the more they will pay for it. And if we get 2 and 3 and 4 potential purchasers all looking at your business, then that gets that competitive tendering up. So that's how we move it from being £1 million up to nearly maybe £2 million. And every business is different, every case is different.
Yeah, we need to move on. There's just one key thing I think you did there, which was about risk.
Yeah.
And I think that's another misunderstanding, if you like, is often people say in the businesses think it's all about presenting the opportunity to the investor, but often the opportunity is kind of a given, and it's more about risk protection. Like the investor wants to know, if I'm moving my money from the safe place it is now and putting it there, what are all the indicators that this could go wrong and could flop and not deliver the results that the business owner has promised.
I'd encourage everybody on the call here to think. It's quite difficult when you're a business owner yourself and you're only thinking about selling to understand the way the purchaser will be thinking. So I'd encourage all of you to think about, if you were buying a business in your sector now, what would you want to see? What would you pay for it? And if I was to ask all of you, how many years payback would you want if you bought a business? Some of you, because of your risk profile, might say, I want payback within 1 year. That's the only risk I'm prepared to take. Some of you might say, I'll wait 3 years. Some of you might say 8 years. Everybody's got a different risk profile and a different understanding of what they can do with that business. But as Paul said, it's the purchaser that makes the offer. We don't put selling prices on any business because we don't want to cap. That would just be a ceiling, wouldn't it? Everybody bids lower, no one bids higher. So we never put a selling price on. We always open it up to purchasers, and depending on what they're going to do with it will depend on their perception of the value. But I would also say, bear in mind that the opportunity might be there, but it is for the purchaser to make that opportunity happen. And therefore, it's their risk, it's their investment. So it's for them to say how much they're prepared to risk, how much they're prepared to take.
Yeah, great. Kirsty, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I'll hang around.
Yeah, cheers. John, do you want to just switch your camera on? Oh, look at that. There's me worrying you had your feet up drinking a cup of coffee.
I did.
Good to see you.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. I'm just going to jump straight in if that's okay. Mindful of time. So do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about Space 48, what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, sure. So Space 48, we're an e-commerce agency. We build e-com sites for ambitious online retailers. So usually they're looking for some form of business transformation that's linked to e-commerce or international expansion. Obviously, it's a good sector to be in at the moment with all the changes that have happened over the past year. So we're busy. We're a growing team. We're a team of 60 odd people now. I'm not sure exactly on the number. We've grown quite fast. In terms of service delivery, four pillars. Design experience, engineering, which separates down into the 3 platforms we're best known for, which is Magento, BigCommerce and Shopify. Performance marketing is a small part of what we do, and then consultancy, e-commerce consultancy, which is probably a fast expanding area within our business. So the skills that we've got there. So that's really working with customers around their proposition development, taking that testing into businesses to help them work through those propositions, and then also help them create the financial models that support that. So yeah, I think that's about us as a nutshell. Customer wise, we work with Richer Sounds, Betty's and Taylors of Harrogate, Menkind, a few other brands that you're probably not familiar with, some B2B brands that we do a lot of e-com work for as well.
How did it all get started, Space 48?
Complete accident, like every agency ever. I suppose just from my own perspective, I had another business at the time. Digital and tech was something that I was passionate about, something that I was doing in another business, and completely by accident, someone approached me, I guess, and said, we want to do this digital thing. Can you help? And it went from there, really.
Yeah. And then you had to hire someone who knew what they were doing on the tools.
Yeah, then I had to hire someone who knew what they were doing. That's right.
Brilliant. And founded in Warrington, and then you moved to Manchester, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And now where are you? I know the answer to this, but where are you now?
We've gone remote. We're staying as we are, I think. I mean, who knows, how things will change when obviously these latest restrictions change and ease up a little bit. I think we definitely all want a little bit more social interaction, but I think that's me and every member of the population, apart from maybe a couple of people that just don't. But yeah, it's working really well for us as a remote business. I guess we're the same as everyone else on the call today. Our primary challenge is recruitment. Our primary challenge is hiring and retaining the best people that we can. We believe that having more flexibility around how we work is just one way of getting some great people and retaining those people as well.
You'd already started to hire as well, to be fair, outside of the local area, haven't you? Because you got people in Ireland and in Bath and...
Yeah. Funnily enough, for us, going remote actually solved one of the challenges that we had. So we already had a distributed team. So you're right that, we moved from we moved from Warrington into Manchester city centre. We acquired a small agency down in Bath, or Bath, as they say, in 2017. So we already had that distributed team. We had one person working out of Dublin as well. So there was challenges that already existed, certainly in terms of hiring people. It was common that we'd say, okay, we need to hire someone. What skills do we need? And that was very quickly followed by, in which office should they be in? Which, looking back on it now, was obviously presenting us perhaps more challenges than we realised at the time.
Yeah.
So now that we don't really think about walls or even borders for that matter, we've been able to hire some great people that, are not only in the UK, but are overseas as well. We've hired some great engineers out of the Ukraine. We've got a few people scattered around Europe. We've got one person who's just started in North America on the East Coast. So it's just that focus of, hiring the best people that we possibly can, without thinking about, the walls or borders, as the case may be. There's other challenges that come with that, but on the whole, it's been very positive.
Yeah, it might sound horrible to say this, but from purely a business perspective, has COVID been good to you, do you think? Has it worked in your favour?
I think I'd have to be honest and say yes. I think in terms of the market, our market, e-commerce, is obviously very positive. I'd say that we've made the most of it as well, though. We've rolled our sleeves up and got on with it. I think there's been various memes and sayings going around over the past 12 months, but when the tide goes out, you find out who's swimming naked. So I think what we did very early on is we buckled down, and it just showed the strength of the culture that we've got, the strength of the team, what we're all about as a group of people. And I think what I saw in our team was everyone just come together and get on with it and just adapt and move forward, which just speaks to the strength of the people in the team, the culture that we've got, I think.
How did the conversations with Foresight begin? What led to that, and would it have happened if it hadn't been for COVID?
Well, first of all, in terms of would it have happened, we got approached by a trade buyer. That's what started it, and I was a little bit surprised that it had come so soon, I guess. So we weren't actually looking at the time, and maybe it was a little bit like what Kirsty mentioned there. It was a little bit of a red letter day for me. I think it was probably, at the time, it was perhaps 18 to 24 months before I thought something like that might happen, but I'd always had it in my mind in the future that we could get there. So we entertained looking at the trade option, and then I think, again, picking up on something that Kirsty recommended in yourself as well, we naturally made sure that we had the right advisors around us. There was various different conversations that we had, people like yourself, lawyers, etc., and also other advisors that I think I should mention. But we started those conversations to look at what it actually meant. Established quite quickly that the trade route at this stage wasn't quite right for Space 48. It didn't match up with what we wanted to do as a business. I don't think it quite matched my own personal objectives, and it didn't match the objectives of the senior management team. And part of the reason for considering the option of then, looking towards Foresight and other private equity options at that point, part of it was also led by the other people in the team, the senior management team specifically, and wanting to make sure that they had an option at this point to come in. While I got the option to exit some of my shares, but obviously I've still got a controlling stake in the business as well.
Yeah. So what does Space 48 look like now compared to what it did before Foresight took over? So what does the leadership and management team look like? Who's involved, and what's your role now?
I'd say that, funnily enough, I don't think it looks that much different than what it did before. We we've been working hard over the last few years to get the business in the shape that we wanted it to be in. I'm not convinced. I was really listening to Kirsty's presentation before. I thought there's some really interesting points in there. I'm not convinced that I'm redundant, or I wasn't at that point, or am I there yet? Maybe that's something that I now need to start thinking about. But before let's go back 24 months ago or 18 months ago, I was very focused on just getting the right group of people doing the right things. So right people, right seats, basically, which we, on the whole, have managed to achieve. Hannah, who's I know has joined the call today, our finance director, she joined us. I think it'll be a year on Thursday, I guess. So yeah, we managed to get that sort of senior leadership team in place, and just the obvious of having, I'm still playing the role of MD, really strong ops director who's been with us for about 7 or 8 years now. Hannah's our FD, she's been with us a year. Stephen, the strategy director, who does quite a lot of the sales, business development, and strategic direction in the company. Nick, who's our technical director, and then another chap called Tom, who's our innovation director. So really strong, sort of solid leadership team, and also a good layer of people beyond that now. So in actual fact, the foresight joining, or our chairman joining, doesn't really change anything in terms of day to day. That we're perhaps just thinking about where we're going to be in like 3 or 5 years time, and what different roles look like for at that point. So we were very fortunate that we'd put all those people in place. The only new addition, I guess you could say, or the new additions would be our chairman, which has been a great addition to the team, and also investment director Matt, who's also been great. So having more people at the sort of at a board level to ask us the right questions and push us in the right direction has been really really helpful.
And why was now the time for you to make this decision, like in your personal career as well?
It's a really good question. I think, like what Kirsty was saying before, it's the only point that I wasn't quite on board with, and I was thinking, exit sounds a little bit final. It's like there's only ever going to be one. And I've been a little bit more focused on thinking, okay, well, how can me and the senior management team exit on multiple occasions? And I think that has got to come because you're showing a trajectory of growth. To go back to the points that Kirsty made on that sort of that life cycle of a business almost, I honestly think that B is too late, because if that's the genuine trajectory of the business, and it's about to hit the top, and then it's about to go in reverse.
Yeah,
I feel like the smart move is to play sooner, and then I wouldn't be comfortable bringing someone into the business or selling something or bringing management into equity if I didn't think that there was potential for the future.
Yeah,
obviously there's a life cycle to every business, but I know it's going to be different for every person that's listening in, I'm sure. But for us at Space 48, I think timing is really good.
Yeah,
done a lot of work to get to this point. I think we identify with a certain stage that we've got to in terms of our own development as a company. The next stage involves a little bit more risk. So then if I think about my personal objectives, which is, no problem in sharing this, it's looking after my family and providing them with some, financial stability, which I've managed to do. I get a tick in the box for achieving that first point. Then equally, management get to come in, and there's an option there for them to look after themselves. And then equally, the investors that have put the money in. I mean, I don't think I owe anyone anything, but where there's a debt to be repaid, or where there's an expectation, which we've gone into this with all eyes open, there's an expectation of the investment that they've put in, they want to get a return, obviously. For me personally, in our life cycle, it wouldn't be the right time to sell at B. We need to be selling at A, because that then gives us a little bit of runway. And I think, market conditions, e-com's obviously in a good place. We think it will be a solid market for the next few years at the very least.
Yeah.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, we manage to get to the next exit, which will happen in, let's say 5 years time, because there's always a horizon on the funds that you're dealing with private equity. And then, then hopefully there's a second exit. which
Yeah.
which is I think that's the smart play for us personally. Different for everyone, but for us.
Well, I don't know if you've done this maths, but what you're effectively looking to do, ideally, is that what you get from this first deal plus what you get from any subsequent deals is more than you would have got if you would have just waited and sold the business by doing it through organic growth. Because as a result of bringing in, investment and smart people around you, you're looking to continue the steepness of that curve and continue to grow it bigger. So you do like a mini exit, mini retirement, we say now, and then you do another exit further down the line. But the sum of both of those two are bigger than if you would have just grown to, trying not to use numbers, but if you were only to have grown to half the size that you are going to grow to as a result of having that investment. Percentages mean nothing, do they? Like, you'd rather have 40-50% of a company that's 2 or 3 times the size than 100% of a company that's a fraction of the size, and it's requiring you to, as Hannah says, be the single point of failure and take on all the risk and the stress of growing it.
Yeah. There's risk whichever route you choose to go. If we decided to carry on growing it organically, there's risk associated with that. The route that we've gone, there's risk associated with that. I think if you choose to go the route that Space 48's gone, or if you choose to go, just if you choose to sell, there's risk associated with it, because you're probably going to have it, at the very least, if it's a trade sale, let's say, there's going to be some form of an earn out linked to that. So you've got to do your own due diligence and pick your partner very carefully. Now, I think we've done as much due diligence as we can, and so far everything's going good. But you've just got to pick wisely. It's definitely a marriage rather than something that you could easily step away from. It's you're all in. But for us personally, you mentioned there the money side of things. Let's say that's one aspect of it. It wasn't the only reason for me personally. It was the challenge of trying to do it. Maybe we've timed it right, maybe we've not, but if one thing's for sure, time finds everyone out. So we've got a challenge that we feel like we're up for, and I think we've got the team to do it. So we'll see how we get on over these next few years.
Well, every time I speak to you, I can see that you've clearly still got obviously a lot of energy and a lot of ambition for being involved in the business. And Kirsty talked before about distressed sales. You don't want to get to that point, but you've taken something off the table now. But now you get to enjoy a new level of challenge with really smart people growing the business at pace. But it's still the business that you gave birth to, and that you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. I feel I know the team share my feelings as well. We feel really proud of the stage that we've got it to get it to where it is, and there's loads of people we owe thanks to for that. Past and present, that have made Space 48 what it is today. But yeah, it's just I don't know the best way of explaining it really. I've said it to a couple of people. It feels like we've just completed a level on a game, and it's like let's go and do the next level. Let's see where we can take it to. For me, going and sitting on a beach in Barbados is not. I think that's where it was anyway. I'm not. That's not for me.
For a few weeks, maybe.
Yeah, take some time out and go and enjoy yourself, and you can do all those things. But there's got to be a bit of something else, something to keep the cogs turning.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the strategy now? You'll obviously have some fairly ambitious growth targets to take Space 48 forward. How much of that is going to come from growing organically and doing more of what you were doing, as opposed to acquiring other businesses or anything else?
So our strategy is focused on organic growth. We presented an organic plan in our information memorandum. We've not been overly ambitious with the growth targets. We've, I think, played it relatively conservatively. Naturally, the investors want us to push that and see, how far we can obviously take it, and so do we. But I think first and foremost, we've been very clear about the plan that we're trying to deliver against. Organic is obviously part of that. There is some IP that we're building out. So we put one person against building out some IP. It's just, we're not listen, we're an agency, not a product company, but there's some small applications that we're building out around the big commerce platform. So I think that's, potentially one way of looking at, future valuations of how we might increase what our multiple is. Expansion into new territories. We were awarded the Big Commerce Agency of the Year for EMEA last year. So expanding into new territories is part of what we're trying to do. And then mergers and acquisitions, or buy and build, is a part of what we're looking at. We do have some experience. I mentioned before there was one small agency that we acquired down in Bath in 2017. Only a small agency of 7 people. So I think in the sort of in the trade, it's what they refer to as acqui-hire. So it's 7 really good people that are really strong and made a great addition to our team. Funnily enough, 2 of those people are now directors at Space 48, and I think of the other 7, I think there's 4 people that are still with us, 3 or 4 people that are still with us. So on that basis, it was successful if you're measuring it based on retention. But it's not buy and build is not for the faint-hearted. I think you have to consider it's a partnership you're getting into. You're trying to put together 2 groups of people, 2 cultures. So there's got to be a really nice fit from a people perspective. And I think for us personally, in our direction of travel, there needs to be a really good fit with what we're trying to build, and that's to be certainly at least the UK and Ireland's leading e-commerce agency.
Yeah, and what kind of businesses would you be interested in speaking to?
Other e-com platform businesses, so if it's someone that's got experience around Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce specifically, we would look at others outside of that if they were the right fit. So people that are similar to what we already are, maybe there's a blend and a partnership to be had there, or a joining of forces that we would look at. We probably need to be of at least a certain size to look at a realistic, you mentioned a really good point around the size and scale of some of the businesses and the amount of due diligence that you need to go through, and the way that the investors would typically want to approach that kind of a process. The due diligence process it's intense. They turn you upside down and inside out. So I'm very confident we've got a good business after all that.
Hannah.
Yeah, and you need a great FD like Hannah as well. So other businesses, I guess if you've got a performance marketing business that's e-commerce focused, that would be something we would take a look at. I think the guiding light is the e-com focus, though. So I would always, if there's anyone listening that even wants to entertain a conversation, or just ask me some questions in a direct message later, or set up a call, I'd be happy to share what we've gone through and what we've learned. Make it sound like it's bad what we've gone through. It wasn't that bad.
You had some help though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Great. Is there any sort of final words of advice that you would give to agencies that are maybe earlier on in the journey? What you wish you'd said to your younger self, I guess.
I would have said to my younger self. I'm not sure if I'd have said it to my younger self, because they probably wouldn't have listened. But don't make yourself redundant too quick. I think I see that quite a lot in agency world, where we're all focused on, trying to become redundant or trying to exit the business. You don't necessarily have to think about exiting, I wouldn't say, but just think about, in the first place, just think about building a great business. Because if you build a great business, you're going to get interest anyway, So I always find that question of like, what's your number like in the future? And probably, I know Adam's on this call as well, and probably smack my wrist for this one, but I probably focus less on what the number is in the future, and just think about building a great business, getting great people around you. And I think if you can focus on the fundamentals of running a really great business, then the other stuff actually takes care of itself. Just like I think I could argue that, or I could at least make the point that that's kind of what happened to us last year. We did the groundwork. We worked on the fundamentals. We got the right people in the right seats. We worked on the proposition. We worked with the right customers. worked with great advisors, people like yourselves at MAP, and others that I could and should mention. But we did all that, and then the result was the result, you know. So we were just then aware to, you know, when the time came around, we spotted our opportunity, and we took it with both hands.
When you reflect back, could you see like a year where you've really elevated yourselves, where you feel like you really worked hard on a lot of those fundamentals and things started to click and it felt better and it felt more mature, and you were building that great business that you talk about?
Probably within the last year, to be honest. I think.
And is that people based? Is that because of the people that came into the business that you managed to find, or was it?
Yeah, I feel it when I funnily enough, actually recently going through this process, it's been naturally quite reflective. You end up looking back and thinking, how did I do that? And at first, you know, being honest, I'd love to say I've got all the answers, but I've just not. We've worked really hard. We've had a good group of people to get to where we are. If I do reflect and look back, I think to myself, okay, well, if I look at the business in like, let's say 2016, 2017, it certainly wasn't what it is now. It was, you know, immature at that point, but we're really still just at the start of our journey. You know, we've got plans in place to grow the business to 100 people and, you know, expand into other countries and whatnot. So these are all exciting things to be involved in. But I guess from like 2017 to 2020, the changes that we needed to make in the business at that point, where we'd grown to a certain size in revenue, and if we'd have not made those changes, we'd have still been doing what we were doing. So fortunately, we had, you know, the right people around us, or where we didn't have the right people, we brought in people like yourselves, or there was other advisors and other, you know, consultants that we worked with, or other people that were very good to me. I guess you could say people that were like maybe not officially mentors, but without realizing it, there was people that I've had around me that have helped me make some of those decisions that I needed to make with the business. Now, if I look at a lot of, you know, small businesses, if I, you know, forget about agencies, any small businesses, you look at a lot of them and you can see reoccurring themes of things that just don't quite work. And it's all the tricky stuff, which is typically people-based or process-based or system-based, but we're all in the business of people. So, you know, getting your team right, getting the culture right, getting the people right, the rest of it can take care of itself.
Yeah, that takes an element of bravery as well, though, to be fair. Like, you're obviously being very modest and giving the praise to all the people that work with you and the advisors, but you've had to make some pretty difficult decisions that maybe your heart didn't want to make along the years, but your head did. And I think specifically when you say just focus on building a great business.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I get that.
Having that relentless pursuit to know I need to do what's right, as opposed to maybe what your heart wants you to do. Yeah,
but if you, yeah, I agree. But I knew what I was getting into before I got into it. You know, running a small business, as many people will know on this call, it's tricky, it's hard. But you got into it for a reason, and you know that it's the part of it that I actually like. It's that I know that some of those things are on me. So no one's going to get the tiny little violin out. I've got to make those decisions, and, you know, just get it done.
Brilliant.
And sometimes it can, you know, like you say, it can be really painful. There's been, you know, some really difficult decisions that we've had to make to get to where we are. But I guess that then comes down to just making the decision. You know, we're there's no point having regrets. You know, you just make the decisions you need to make.
It tends to be that those decisions are right for the individual as well as the business anyway. And you do it respectfully and you both move forward. So Steve has asked, looking back, what was the catalyst for creating a SMT or board, so senior management team or board?
What was the catalyst for creating it? So the senior management team, we do have a board now, and we have an SMT as well, or the senior leadership team as we call them. So our senior leadership team is really our execs, our directors, plus, you know, maybe one or two people that are also on the fringes of that. And then the board is more more structural, or more about governance, where we've obviously brought in our investors. So we have an investment director, we have an observer that comes in, we have a chairman, and we have myself and Hannah that sit on the actual board. So that's where certain decisions need to be made. There's certain sort of governance and structure in place where Could be, for example, obviously we have our regular board meetings once a month. There's various types of reporting that we have to do for that in terms of bringing the board pack together. It's very collaborative though, the way that we work, the way that we work with the senior leadership team and what they see and what they do is almost what we do in a senior leadership team almost mirrors what happens in a board. So it's more of a structural thing that I guess that the investors and the chairman would want it to be structured in that way.
Yeah.
But then you obviously need that leadership team to, eventually make me redundant.
Yeah. Like you say, it's about enjoying what business actually entails as well. Like if you're going to be on the board of directors, that is a lot of conversations about legals and governance and finance. It's not that
exciting though. Some of it's quite dry.
Well, it's exciting if you're a certain way.
Yeah, I suppose. It's not for me then.
Yeah, not exciting is probably the wrong word, but you relish the challenge of developing yourself as a business person. You get some business owners who, that it's clear that they want to be the creative flair of the organization, for example, and they're really good at the sales and the marketing and the brand activity. But being part of the board of a growing and mature business is a lot more to do with the governance, and it's kind of, enjoys maybe the wrong word, but do you relish those challenges, or are they like a chore? So you're doing what you want to do, and that's important to recognize at times, isn't it? It's like when you were going through the conversation with Foresight and thinking the next stage Space 48, some of your considerations will be, where do I fit in? There's no point in being some agencies that sell or get private equity investment, they'll hire a different MD or CEO because the original MD or CEO is more of a salesperson or an operations person.
Yeah, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we should be doing that anyway. I don't think nothing's changed from that perspective. That I'm always looking, I look towards myself to think how I can be better and how I can improve, and I'm probably my own biggest critic. If I get to a stage where I just don't think I'm doing the right job or I'm not the right person for the job, I'll put my hand up weeks before anyone else does, because I'll be constantly looking at how I'm performing.
Speaking of putting your hand up, Anthony's put his hand up, so I'm just going to allow him to speak. It says allowed to talk, Anthony. If you want to share your video as well, that's fine. It's up to you.
Sorry, I didn't realise I actually pressed that. I was typing a Q&A question.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, you might as well ask it out loud now.
Yeah, sure. Hi, John. I can't show my camera, Paul. It's not an option, but don't worry.
Right, no worries.
I just wondered, in building various bits of IP, by the sounds of what you've done, you may have come across our agency in the past when we did e-com. But I wondered, when you consider the charging to your clients, how have you worked out, or how have you thought about how much you can charge on the value proposition rather than the hours and the effort? Because obviously, as a consultancy, we're generally scrutinized for the hours we spend on things, but obviously there's a degree where that IP it comes in. Have you guys built much of that into your process?
I didn't catch where you were from, Anthony. Which business?
Sorry, I work for a company called The Distance.
Distance, okay, right, yeah.
We used to do e-com a long time ago, but we're now very specialist at mobile.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Well, nice to meet you. Do we build value in? I think it's easier to do for some of the products. Certainly, when I say products, I'm talking still about service delivery here. I think it's easier to do to build in value if it's on a consultancy basis. So where I was talking before about our sort of direction of travel with the consultancy services and us helping customers with proposition development, testing and trialing what it is that how we're trying to help them, and then also the financial modeling that supports that. I think that's easier to do that on a value basis, because I don't think there's necessarily it's going to take X many hours to do this. It is more of a product, and it's perhaps done on a value basis, because that if you deliver, it's kind of almost doesn't really matter what it is that you deliver, but if you deliver the right level of thinking with the right supported financial model, and that leads to a business growing by 10%, and that 10% equates to £1 million for argument's sake, then fundamentally what's that worth?
So effectively, if I'm reading that right, you're saying that you've basically productized part of the consultancy service,
yeah,
and that's where you're charging the value on.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
It's harder to do, like where we do design and build, for example. Obviously, that's a little bit, that is obviously more on a T&M basis. That everything that we do there is T&M. There's elements of what we do where discovery, for example, discovery would typically be a certain size. It would typically be a number of days. But I think the problem or challenge that I guess we face with an overlap of value-based and T&M is that because our team is so used to working on a time and materials basis, you could well say the value of this is 20,000, and then they'll go and spend £20,000 worth of time. So I don't think it always naturally translates into some other areas of the business. Like it's still, a service-based product, i.e. discovery, but there's people in there that typically work on a time and materials basis, and there's people in there that still track their time on a day-to-day basis. So there's a little bit of I don't think I've really got a solid answer for you. There's just certain products within the business or certain things that we do where that's more obvious, and I think the consultancy is the best example of that. The IP that I mentioned earlier, where we're building out some products or applications that sit around the big commerce marketplace, that is IP, that's I guess value based, and funnily enough we're going through the process at the moment of saying, okay, well, is this product worth $50 a month or $100 a month or whatever it may be? But that's lots of small amounts versus bigger ticket stuff that an agency might do on service delivery.
Yeah, great. Thank you, John.
Cool.
Cheers, Anthony. Right, I think we're at about the end of the questions, John. I'm mindful that I've kept you for a long time and you've probably got meetings to have and targets to hit. So just to say thank you for taking time out to speak to the community today. I do really
having me on.
Thank you, and thank you, Kirsty, as well. I don't know if you want to switch your camera back on, Kirsty. You're still there? There she is. Brilliant. I'll allow you to have one final question if you wanted to, Kirsty, if there's anything you wanted to ask John.
No, it's fine. I think he's answered it.
Happy that, oh yeah, you posted that one about the due diligence.
Due diligence, yeah, but he talked about it. It does turn you inside out, doesn't it?
Right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. So we'll follow up in the next 48 hours with an email and a post in the WhatsApp community with the recording of today's webinar and Kirsty's slides as well. John's obviously been very kind, offering his time to anyone who would like a discussion. So just reach out to him via the usual social media channels, or let us know at MAP if you'd like us to put you in touch. We will also announce the date and the topics of next month's webinar as well in that email follow-up. So thank you very much, and go and enjoy the sun. Bye.